Welcome aboard! We will be your guides during this magical journey into the movies. It's the perfect job for us because we love the movies. It's showtime! Ready when you are, CB!
Action!
Welcome to Monoreel Radio, episode number 344. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jackie.
And we're here this week to review and discuss Pollyanna. This film recently celebrated its 65th anniversary.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised because I feel like Disney was pretty quiet about it. I believe it was released back in May, but I don't think that they really did anything for it this year. I know with the 60th, it was pretty big. They brought Hailey Mills out. They interviewed her because this was her first film with Disney, so it was a huge deal. And she also won a juvenile Oscar for it, her performance in this. So it's definitely one of those classic Disney films that is highly, highly revered. They even celebrate Pollyanna Day. So I was surprised that it was just kind of hush-hush this year. I feel like the past couple of weeks, though, you have asked me about my history with films. And that history has been non-existent. So I'm going to flip the script. What is your history with Pollyanna?
Non-existent! I knew this film through title and title alone. I had seen the title card on Disney+. I obviously knew this was a revered film, but it wasn't one that ever came across our desk, so to speak. Like, it wasn't one we watched as kids. I think my father liked it because my father liked Hailey Mills, but I don't think my mom really cared about this movie. She loved Mary Poppins and Little Mermaid. Those were more the films that we watched with her. Cinderella was another one. But this one never really, this wasn't one that was ever of any interest to us and was never shown to us.
That brings up an interesting point because I feel like the title Pollyanna, and maybe because it was a book that they adapted, I feel like that's bigger than the attachment to Hailey Mills with this film. I feel like when you think Hailey Mills for Disney, you think Parent Trap immediately, right? So yeah, I mean, like, it would make sense that it kind of fell by the wayside for you. The only reason that I knew about it and I had watched it is because my mom always said how much she loved this movie. And I can definitely see why, but I had popped it on one day just to see what all the hype was about. And I was pretty shocked by the turn that it takes at the end. And I was like, does my mom even remember this? Like, does she know what she loved about it so much? Does she even remember the ending? Because I think the bigger takeaway is the rest of the film leading up to it. But obviously, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, the ending for me, when I saw it, was pretty shocking. But with all of that being said, is this the timeless classic that your mother fell in love with? Why is it that maybe Disney didn't necessarily do a lot to recognize this film? And how does it hold up against the other live-action Walt Disney, specifically the ones that he made? How does this compare to the other live-action films of its era? That, on top of many other things, is what we are here to discuss today.
This episode is sponsored by Fierce Fox Co., designers of handmade silk screen shirts. Fierce Fox has a t-shirt, tank top, hoodie, or crew neck for every fandom. So whether it's the movies or theme parks, princesses or villains, the MCU or Star Wars, everyone will find something they love. The designs range from subtle quotes from our favorite films to iconic characters we can wear proudly in so many different styles, such as sketchbook and concert tees. Listeners of Monoreel Radio can get a 20% discount using the code Monoreel at checkout. Visit fiercefoxco.com to check out all of the collections.
Fair warning. I really stripped this plot down to try and get it as efficient and consistent as I could. With all of that said, and following in a time-honored Disney tradition, following the death of her missionary parents, Pollyanna Whittier is sent to Harrington to live with her wealthy Aunt Polly, who controls all things that happen in their town. The town is also named after the family. She prioritizes things like suggesting hellfire and brimstone sermons to Reverend Ford and lets the town orphanage fall into disrepair. The town wants to rebuild the orphanage, however, Aunt Polly won't hear of it as her father donated the building to the town and she considers it to be a landmark. She is controlling of her staff, going so far as to forbid her downstairs maid, Nancy, from pursuing a relationship with George Dobbs. Unlike the gloomy town, Pollyanna is positive and cheery, which some find as a turnoff. They sometimes even find it annoying, though she develops a relationship with Nancy and hides Nancy's relationship with George from Aunt Polly. She also befriends a local orphan boy named Jimmy, as well as the reclusive Mr. Pendergast, who is rumored to capture children and keep them in his basement. The town begins to plan a carnival to raise money to build a new orphanage. However, Aunt Polly is firmly against it and convinces Reverend Ford to not support it. Others in the town, because of this, become hesitant to show their support, except for Dr. Edmund Chilton, Aunt Polly's ex-boyfriend, who speaks of a former Aunt Polly who would literally let her hair down. Pollyanna also meets Mrs. Snow while delivering charity jelly jars. Mrs. Snow is a hypochondriac who sits in her home all day convinced that she is sick and waiting for her own death. While initially confused by Pollyanna's cheerfulness and reliance on playing the glad game that her father had devised for her, the town starts to see her charm and begins to look at the cheerful side of life, except for Aunt Polly, who forbids Pollyanna from speaking of her father and continues to fight back against this bazaar, this carnival that they are planning. Pollyanna visits with Reverend Ford as he practices his sermon, the one that was one of the many that was suggested by Aunt Polly for the upcoming Sunday. And she shares that her father often struggled with his sermons. He too was a reverend, but started reading quote-unquote glad passages, and it turned things around and helped with the congregation. The following Sunday, Reverend Ford shares a glad passage and apologizes for not having done so previously. He then publicly supports and vocally supports the bazaar and encourages everyone to attend, infuriating Aunt Polly, who forbids Pollyanna from attending. On the night of the carnival, Jimmy reminds Pollyanna that she is singing America the Beautiful, so Pollyanna escapes through her bedroom window out of her attic, climbing down a tree just outside the house. She shows up at the bazaar where the entire town is out having fun. She wins a doll in a carnival game, one that she had always wanted. She performs America the Beautiful, and upon returning home needs to sneak back into the home. She climbs up the tree, and as she's getting into the window, she drops her doll, which is now leaning on the edge of the roof. As she reaches for it, she falls from the house and is paralyzed. Big turn here, right? She is paralyzed. Aunt Polly finds her. She calls Edmund to give her the diagnosis, and she starts feeling guilty for what she has done. Pollyanna then goes into a deep depression and declares that she no longer wants to play the glad game. However, Edmund tells her that they can bring her to Baltimore, where she will have a surgery that will give her the ability to walk again. The entire town shows up at the house to show her that they are all glad and the positive impact that she had on them, and they see her off as she is leaving on a train to go to Baltimore with Edmund and her Aunt Polly. She sees that the town has now taken on the nickname of the Glad Town. They are changing the sign at the train station. This is a really, really condensed version of the actual story.
Well done, though.
Here's the thing. Like, I'm going to just say this off the rip. There is something to be said about the pacing of this movie. I think that this is going to become a through line in a lot of what we talk about. This movie has a 2-hour and 14-minute runtime, and it should probably have a 90-minute runtime. The pacing is all over the place here. This feels to me almost like we are watching back-to-back episodes of the Pollyanna television show. This doesn't feel like a film. This seems like a series.
I would agree with that, because they really could have done one scene with each of the people that she impacts, and then she's the through line, and her relationship with Aunt Polly as the through line that strings it all together. But you keep doing all of these checkbacks with everybody in the town, and it could have been a lot more streamlined. I agree. one of the reasons for that, the writer-director David Swift, he did want to cut about 20 minutes out because he recognized that it was dragging a little bit. It was actually, and I hate to speak ill of the man because he's a genius, but it was Walt, because he was so enamored with Hailey Mills' performance, and he loved what he saw from the dailies. He didn't want to cut anything out, which I found kind of interesting too, because I thought it may be most of the times when Walt adapted a story, it was because he loved a book so much. So I thought it was maybe because he had an attachment to the book and didn't want to alter it. Because this book, I mentioned it before, it was written by Eleanor H. Porter in 1913. It was published. And at the time, it was the biggest American novel since Uncle Tom's Cabin. So, naturally, he would want to make a movie out of it because it is well documented that Walt loved Americana. So, of course, he's going to want to tell the biggest American story of the time. But now I'm even more curious to read it because I'm wondering if it even reads a little bit tighter than the movie sort of plays out.
My understanding is that it doesn't read well at all nowadays. It's now considered... A review that I recently read of it was that it was a saccharine-filled romp. But
I think that sort of holds true to the movie, too.
But at the time, hey, guess what? Maybe a saccharine-filled romp is what we need right now. Kids don't need to think like they're 40 years old when they're 7. Not everything needs to be serious. Not everything needs to be gloomy. That's sort of the entire point of this movie. So, in that respect, this movie is kind of timeless if you think about it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the message is absolutely timeless. But
right.
If you think about it, too, 1913, when it was published, we're a couple of years shy of Depression era. So, I'm sure it was very impactful at the time. But, yeah, this is one of those classic, tried and true Walt films that has a very powerful message that withstands the test of time. And it is just a feel-good film. So let's get into it. I said it before, Americana, right? You've got this Victorian era idyllic town, and boy, do they lay it on thick in this setup. It's
really, really heavy-handed, but I don't mind it. In fact, I love it. I think the sets, I think the score, the costumes, it is so perfectly dressed from top to bottom.
I would have watched 2 hours of just footage of this. It was so beautiful. Was not expecting nudes, though.
Yes. Young man swinging from a rope into the lake, but hey, that's what they did in 1910, 1913, because I think the film is actually set in 1910. The book was 1913, but I think the movie is... I read it set in 1910.
Yeah, it's more turn of the century. And I think these are supposed to be the boys at the orphanage. So, it does set up the idea that they didn't have much. They wouldn't have had swimsuits. And this is what they were doing. It was,
and they couldn't get their clothes wet.
Exactly. Because they didn't really have anything else. I think there's a little bit of pearl clutching now. Oh my God, you see a child's bottom in a Disney film. But, it does go back to the idea of just innocence. That's what these movies were.
Yeah.
So Pollyanna arrives on the train, and I love that before we meet her, this woman, Mrs. Tarbell, she gets off the train and she is barking orders at her husband, complaining to the conductor that there was smoking in the dining car. So I love that we meet the town uppity up before we really get into anyone else in our main cast. And it's a great misdirect because you think that she's going to be the stick in the mud throughout the film. And it's kind of a diversion for what we're eventually going to get with Aunt Polly as far as her being controlling or wanting to control everything.
The most startling thing to me about this, and this happens often in the movie, "Your parents are dead, orphan girl," is more or less what they should be saying to her. they don't hide the fact, I mean, because this character specifically says to her, you know, you should have or could have ended up in an orphanage. You're very lucky that your Aunt Polly took you in.
Well, that's sort of jarring to me too, because it's like, lady, you're preaching to the choir. Like, of course she knows that, because she does have such a sunny disposition and she is always looking on the bright side of things. So I think I want to, it's sort of a weird intro for Pollyanna, because I wanted the clap back. I wanted her to be like, you know, not in a nasty way, but I wanted her to at least stand up for herself and say, of course I recognize that I'm very fortunate that my aunt, my insanely wealthy aunt took me in. And she just kind of stands there and takes it. So on first viewing, I didn't really think too much of it, because it's like, yeah, the kid is traumatized and she just got picked up from everything that she knew and dropped in this town where she knows no one, not even her aunt that she's going to live with. But then on second viewing, I was kind of like, this is sort of out of character and sort of a missed opportunity to set her up as, no matter how bad things are, she's still going to find the good. And it would have been kind of jarring to like rock the town in that way of, oh, wow, this kid is, there's something special about her, because even with all that she's been through, she's managing to keep her chin up. And it's sort of ironic that in a film with a runtime like this, they didn't take the time to let that breathe. There also, I think, is a big missed opportunity for showing how, quote unquote, unhappy the town is. Because I think they're trying to channel that through Mrs. Tarbell, but she just comes off as a curmudgeon who wants things her way. There's no interaction with anybody else in this town to show that they're unhappy. And I feel like that needed to be set up now to really earn Pollyanna's influence in the end.
I also think that they introduce far too many characters far too early. I feel like the first 15 to 20 minutes of this movie is setting up characters and introducing us to characters. I think when it comes to Nancy, I think they set her up very well. They probably set her up the best of all of them because it's done efficiently. Mm-hmm. The rest of, and then, you know, you think you're done meeting new characters, and here comes another new character, and now we have to, we get their entire history with the town and with Aunt Polly and why they're unhappy. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot of setup. It's a lot of see and say as well.
A lot of how do you do? How do you do? But to your point, they're taking the time to introduce all of these people, but nobody is reading as unhappy because they're all so polite. And when it's cut against the vibrant colors of this town and these incredible costumes, it's really not reading the doom and gloom that they try to retrofit at the end when everyone's saying that Pollyanna turned it around and her disposition changed everything. Before we get to the house, I want to point out something that I caught that was really, really interesting. You load Pollyanna and all of her belongings into this car, this beautiful car. And the license plate says DIS on the back, Diz, obviously. And I feel like now people would look at that as an Easter egg. But what's really, really interesting, and I only know this because one of my best friends worked for the DMV in California. And part of his job, like, he knew all of the license plate numbers and where they were issued. But this was something I never even knew about Hollywood. There are 20 license plate numbers in rotation for film cars. So they get issued out whenever anything is filmed, like, anything from Fast and the Furious to, a small indie film where it's just about a family and they have a car. Those license plate numbers get applied to any film car while they're shooting. And if you think about it, it's so interesting because how many movies do you see and you just take it for granted? You never even notice. Like, we're seeing those same numbers over and over and over again in these shots. So I don't think the Diz was an Easter egg so much as it was something that was issued just so that they were able to operate this vehicle on location.
Unless you have a film, I get to work them both in this comment, like Ghostbusters and Back to the Future.
Oh my God. I should have known that. Yeah, the vanity plates do not apply.
Right. Well, that's an interesting question, though. When you have something like an Ecto-1, that is very... I mean, that's a focal point of that car, that license plate. With the DeLorean, out of time is a focal point of that vehicle. I'm wondering, when they're shooting on location, because they need to have license plates for these cars, if, like in New York, you have license plates on the front and the back bumper. Yeah. Here in Florida, you only have license plates on the back bumper. So I'm wondering if, when you're making these kind of movies, if you have a vanity plate on the front, the real plate on the back when you're shooting a straight ahead of the vehicle, but then when you're shooting the vehicle from behind, if you have to reverse the plates. I'd imagine to make them street legal, those plates always have to be on that vehicle.
Right, because even if you are shooting on a closed set, you are still operating a vehicle. You have to have a license on it. You have to have somebody registered that can drive the car.
I mean, I've never even thought about that.
I had never either, and it was just the most fascinating thing when he told me, but it's like, can you imagine how many plates we're seeing, the same numbers that we should be recognizing over and over again because there's only 20 of them.
Interesting. It's a good catch. Also, don't forget, her parents are dead. That is my next note, because they keep hammering this home. Your parents are dead. It does become almost laughably distracting, the amount of times that she's reminded that her parents have passed away. And that she's lucky to not be in the orphanage. Especially
from her aunt. Yeah. And I mean, that is character development, though, right? Before we get into Aunt Polly, house, absolutely stunning. Oh, my gosh. I know they went through great lengths to find this house. They ended up shooting in Northern California in Santa Clara, I believe. For the exterior, and then the interior, this was all a studio build, which is why it's so elaborate and gorgeous. But just absolutely incredible. And then we meet the formidable Aunt Polly. Her intro is so jarring because it's not just that before she talks to Pollyanna, she's talking with the Reverend about his sermon. So you have an unmarried woman, which is unheard of at the time. She's got insane wealth, which eventually we're going to learn is from her father's money because he basically owned the whole town. And she is not only... It's not only the fact that she is weighing in on the Reverend's sermon, but the content that she's telling him to have in it, as far as the hellfire and brimstone and, she reiterates her father's belief that you've only got one day with the congregation and then 6 days for them to go mess everything up and sin. So make it count. Scare them so that maybe by day 3 or 4, before it wears off, maybe they won't mess things up so bad. Like, it's just like, what an outlook. But it is the polar opposite of Pollyanna, because Polly is looking and expecting the worst in people, where Pollyanna looks for the best.
So I thought to myself, so this is the infamous Aunt Polly as soon as she came on the screen. I think this is partly why Disney did not make a big deal out of the anniversary here. I mean, they didn't even do something on Disney Plus with celebrate the 65th anniversary, click here to watch it. Like, nothing. They do stuff like that all the time. They didn't for this. Aunt Polly was a character I knew because of Aunt Polly's Dockside, which was a quick service eatery at the Magic Kingdom, Where was it located? On Tom Sawyer Island, which was closing right around the same time that they were celebrating this anniversary. So, between the novel itself having been recently reviewed as being a saccharine-filled romp, because so many people were so hot-button about Tom Sawyer's Island closing, it's almost like we're going to celebrate this film and celebrate this character. Also, the one thing that she has in Magic Kingdom, we're getting rid of next month.
It's not hers. Tom Sawyer also had an Aunt Polly.
Oh, I thought that this was all one and the same.
No, and if it was something Pollyanna related, actually, it's worth probably taking a closer look. I'm wondering if you find something on Main Street USA.
Maybe. That's interesting. I thought that this was the Aunt Polly.
Nope.
Oh, all right. Shows how much I know. But anyway, with that said, something that they do here that I didn't quite care for when it comes to Pollyanna. So she meets Aunt Polly, and Aunt Polly wants her to be a prim, proper young woman. Don't run up the stairs. Your clothes are disgusting. We need to change that. And Pollyanna's like, well, these are the clothes I have because this is what was donated. This is what I got from donations because her parents were missionaries. And Pollyanna is so excited that she's like, you're going to take me to a store and buy me new clothes? It's almost like, the hell with my dead parents, we're going shopping. But what I don't like about Pollyanna here is that instead of making this a class battle, and that being why she's so out of place, other than her cheery disposition, they sort of just make her clumsy. And they make her socially inept. It's funny that she's so polite, and she knows how to be polite, and she knows how to speak to adults. And then in the same breath, she'll be like, oh, Aunt Polly, you must be so happy that you are just so rich and wealthy. Like, they just make her to be a very clumsy character.
Well, I think they were trying to lean into the awkwardness of the situation because they've never met, and yet Polly is her namesake. So I wish we had gotten some sort of an explanation of, or some sort of feeling out of Polly at all of, her sister's dead too, her sister who named her daughter after you. So how do you feel about that? And instead, it's just, I have a child in my home now, and I've never had a child, and I have to adapt my life to this now. And we do see her making concessions for Pollyanna, which is good. And it's not that she's not willing to do it, and it's not that she feels like Pollyanna is a burden, but you do get the impression that this is not totally out of the goodness of her heart, opening her home up in this way. It's more about, this is my duty, so I'm just going to do it. And I think it also is a lot more of how it's going to be perceived that she didn't allow her sister's child to go to the orphanage and brought her into the home instead.
Well, I think that's good character development for Aunt Polly, because we set the standard for the town. She takes great pride in that. I mean, the town is literally named after the family. So I buy into that, and I think what that accomplishes is that it gives her a why without just making her evil, because most of what she does from this point forward is borderline demonic.
Right. And that's what I was getting at, is that this is where the awkward tension comes in, is that Pollyanna recognizes that her Aunt Polly did a nice thing for her, but because they don't really know each other yet, she is still a kid. So I think the blurting out of, you must be glad that you're so wealthy, it's just, she needed something to say. She complimented how lovely the home was, and she didn't just leave it there. This is her default setting, is find the good in something, play the glad game like her father taught her. So this was part of that. And, she doesn't really know any better because she's never been around family. She probably thinks, well, this is my aunt. It's okay to, to talk about money. And then, she learns that it's not. I love how Nancy just grabs her out of the room. Like, oh my God, we can't have this anymore. And she just ends the situation by dragging her out of there. And then to your point, they do have sort of a clunky dinner because Aunt Polly is trying to level with her, and she asks how the room is, and she says, I hope you'll be happy with me. So there is an olive branch that's being extended. And then after dinner is when you get that really great scene that you just mentioned, where she's kind of laying down the law of how she wants Pollyanna to conduct herself, especially in the town, because the Harringtons set the standard and people look to them to set an example, or at least that's what Polly wants. And then Pollyanna, she's going to leave to go up for bed. And I think that's where her gratitude really sets in, because without really giving it much thought, she asks Aunt Polly if she can give her a kiss goodnight, because that's the relationship that she had with her parents. And like I said, she's just a kid. She doesn't know any better. This is my family. I'm going to kiss her goodnight. So Aunt Polly is totally taken aback. But you get this really sweet moment, and this is where Pollyanna starts breaking down walls already of the hardened exterior. And I think that's why Polly says she's going to take her shopping. Part of it is for the optic, but the other part is, this kid who doesn't know me is showing me love, and this is how Polly is going to show her love in return.
And then we get the shopping montage. Even all the way back to the 60s, if it's a coming-of-age tween movie, we are getting a montage of trying on clothes.
Trying on clothes and looking like Mr. Stay Puffed. What they bought her, she does.
She's so cute.
Yeah, roasting marshmallows at Camp Wakanda. All right, let's talk about good old cousin Fred.
Oh God.
The introduction.
Can we not? Can we just skip this whole thing, please?
George, who is secretly seeing Nancy, and Nancy tries to cover it up by introducing him as Cousin Fred, old handsy Cousin Fred. And he is like way too happy to be a part of this entire thing.
But it gets worse, because then he says this cousin was always like a sister to me,
Yeah.
and then continues to kiss her on the mouth. Oh my God. Factoring in the end of this movie and the fall, this is still the most cringy thing that happens. I do like, though, at least that Nancy has this forbidden love. I think it works for her character, and it even speaks even more to Polly's character, because she doesn't want any gentleman callers around. She says as much.
Right.
Because she doesn't want Nancy starting her own family and eventually leaving her.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. She works a submissive job, but she's not a submissive person. So you do need to give a layer to Nancy. And then I think you do also need to pepper in that Pollyanna, she's sort of older and wiser beyond her years. Like, she knows what's going on, and she knows that she can hide it. And in a way, like, it sort of gives her a little bit of skin in the game, because now she has something that she can kind of hold over Nancy's head. So she does hold some leverage in the relationship.
But it's immediately negated, because Pollyanna does take the fall for them getting home late, and she covers for Nancy.
Right.
So you do eventually get that great bonding moment, but I feel like this needed to breathe and marinate for a day or two, where she's holding one over on her before she's like, I'm not actually going to rat you out.
Right. Let's talk about the neglect at the orphanage, because the pipes have burst. The place is in disarray, and it's like the tale as old as time, that the one person, apparently the only person that can actually fix the problem, is the one that's going, no, it's fine, leave it, don't worry about it. This is what sets up the whole thing where the town wants the orphanage raised and rebuilt, modernized with better amenities, and Aunt Polly doesn't want to do so because my father built that orphanage and donated it, and it's a landmark. But they go so far as to say, like, we've put as much money into this as we can. We can't keep renovating it it would cost less to just build a new thing. So it's not really about the money, because she is willing to continue to pay to have it fixed. They double down on the idea that it's about my father, but like, I feel like we don't do enough fleshing out who her father was and why the legacy means so much, because we're too busy introducing more characters and we have to like power rush through their background to get everybody up to speed.
Seriously, you do meet everyone in the town. It does pop up a little bit later when you find out how many businesses Polly does have her hands in because of her father. But she is very much keep the beaches open in this case,
yes.
right? You know, she'll pay to repair it as long as that building that her father put down still stands and the Harrington name is still on it, which it will be if she just does the repairs. But she wants the optic of it being exactly what it was. It really is a great metaphor for what she's really after, which is the power and control. And really the bigger conflict of the film, which is keeping things as they are or embracing change.
Right. And speaking of introduction, let's throw Edmund into the mix, because now Edmund arrives. Dr. Edmund, who is the ex-boyfriend of Aunt Polly. I like his introduction because, I mean, is he that interesting of a character?
Not at first.
Not at first. He becomes more interesting towards the end of the film, but I think what he serves more than anything else is to show that Aunt Polly used to literally let her hair down. The hair metaphor actually is brilliant writing. That she used to wear it long and wear it down, and it flowed, and it was beautiful, and now she's got it pinned up very tight, very stern. I love what it does for her more than what it means for him.
I would agree with that. I do like this whole scene, though, because Polly is so conniving. When the issue is happening at the orphanage, she tells everyone, don't worry, come back to my house. I will open my home and we will discuss it. So again, she's putting herself in a position of power. And then she tries to buy everyone by serving them lunch when the mayor is basically calling her out on everything in her own home. And, you know, she says something to the effect of, oh, you never change, do you? And you know, she agrees at that point to fix the orphanage. She says it's my duty and I'm not going to shirk it. But like, that's still not enough. The mayor storms out, but she still has the rest of the townspeople in her back pocket because she's like, all right, we'll discuss this after lunch. And you know that they never really do. It's
right.
just really, you know, her trying to keep the peace. But what does really work well in the scene is when Ed meets Pollyanna. She's hiding in a plant because she wants to know exactly what's going on. And there's a really cute bonding moment when he gives her some of the sandwiches.
Yeah, he's feeding her the finger sandwiches. Then you get Sunday Mass. Here's the thing. This sermon is good, but it's such a pace killer. It's a great performance for Carl Malden. Carl Malden is phenomenal in this movie. It shows the hellfire brimstone sermon that he is giving at the behest of Aunt Polly. So it shows, again, the sort of power she has over the town and how she's keeping everything under her thumb. And she is keeping everything in a very dark place. But this goes on for far too long. This could have been trimmed in half, and it still would have run forever.
It is like you're sitting in church watching it play out in real time. You know, it's definitely intense. He clearly took what she said to heart because he opens with death comes unexpectedly. So he really is trying to strike fear into the heart of his congregation. I think the other thing that really kills it, as far as the pacing, because you're right, his performance is unbelievable. Like, that does hook you. But they film this separately, and you can tell. There are no wides that show the back of the people's heads with him in front. It is a static shot of him, and then you get all of the reactions from the congregation of them cringing over how, off-putting this is to them, because he's basically reprimanding them when they haven't done anything.
Right.
So I think that's part of the draggy feeling too, is because you're not cutting against anything.
Yeah. You then get, moving on, a really great scene with Jimmy, who's in the orphanage, and he climbs out a tree outside of his window, and Pollyanna goes, and in fact, I think the exact words are, "You stupid boy, you could get hurt." And he says, "God put this tree here so that I could climb it." And I love what that means for Jimmy, because he's got nothing else to look forward to. He's living in this orphanage. He's not been adopted. So this is literally his escape. So I love that he uses that quite literally. The symbolism of it is great, but I also like how it foreshadows what's going to happen at the end of the film with the tree.
I agree. And it's so subtle because the focus is so much on Jimmy. You don't realize at all that it's foreshadowing Pollyanna.
Right.
And I think part of it too, I love the innocence of it.
Yes.
That Jimmy is just, oh, God's going to protect me. He wouldn't let anything bad happen to me. So he wouldn't have put this tree here otherwise.
Right.
It's just the most childlike, innocent view of having faith, which is really, really sweet. And it's smart because it keeps your attention there, so you don't realize how much it is foreshadowing.
And they're smart to put it after this sermon that's out there to scare people.
Yeah.
So the placement of it is really good. And then you get them trespassing on Mr. Pendergast's property, and you have the evil Mr. Pendergast, right, who's got the reputation. He's like the guy that salts the sidewalks in Home Alone, right? Right, the South Bend shovel slayer, where he has this sort of ominous presence, and he has a reputation, and he knows the reputation that he's got, but he kind of like gets off on living up to it. Like, he doesn't do anything to sort of like to clear his own name, because the rumor is that he captures children and throws them and enslaves them in his basement.
He's an old man living by himself with nothing else to do, wouldn't you?
Sure.
What's more entertaining than that?
But the whole thing is just really funny to me, that this is like just what he's latched onto, and he basically tells them, "Leave or I'm going to throw you in the dungeon with the rest of the kids."
The only issue that I have is that eventually you know that Pollyanna is going to win his heart, so it kind of takes forever to set this all up.
It does. And in fact, my next note is there's too much happening just to happen. Like, this is where it starts to feel like it's a television series that was just put into one film, because there's so much setup so that they can pay off on it later that it feels so heavy. There are points of this film where the pacing just drags because they're doing things on the screen just to pick up on them later.
Yes, but I feel like that's all intentional because they are trying to give us slice of life, and I think it makes it all the more shocking at the end. Because the first time I saw this, I had no idea where this movie was going. You know, it does. Meet Me in St. Louis is very much like this, but because it's a musical, it keeps the pace moving a lot faster and it's a lot more lively. But you do get a lot of these very much slice of life moments, but it's a happy ending. So I feel like here it's very much a twist ending. In Meet Me in St. Louis, the family's going to move away, and then, they decide not to. They're going to stay and keep their home.
Right.
But, different genre. It is supposed to feel very light and fluffy, and it very much does. Here, I think they're trying to lure you into that false sense of security. that it's all going to work out, because you do have Pollyanna, Little Miss Sunshine, always, saying that she's glad about everything and looking on the bright side. And, you'd never expect something bad to happen to her.
Right.
Especially as the protagonist. So I think it's very much intentional.
Let's talk about the charity jelly deliveries, where we get introduced to Mrs. Snow.
She is a piece of work.
She is a piece of work. She's like 12 years older than her own daughter, which is a very bizarre casting choice. But she is just she is a character. I almost said a bad word, but she's a character. She's sitting there planning her own demise. She's treating her daughter, who is her caretaker, like dirt, and she is just waiting for death. It's just so funny that you get introduced to this curmudgeon after being introduced to Mr. Pendergast. Like, I feel like there's too many of them at this point. Plus, the Reverend Ford. Like, there's just a lot. I get it with Aunt Polly, but there's a lot of curmudgeon in this movie.
I would have led with this one, especially because it would have made so much sense for them to do the charity deliveries after church on Sunday.
Yes.
And you would also think that Pollyanna, she's asking all these questions about why do we have to do this. Wouldn't she understand charity more than anybody?
She should, because her parents were missionaries.
Yeah. But Mrs. Snow is great. I mean, she's a hypochondriac. She's going to contradict everything. If her daughter gives her tea, she was going to want coffee, just for the sake of it. It almost does parallel Polly a little bit, just because this is her way of exercising control over her situation.
Right.
She just wants attention.
After we move on from Mrs. Snow, we are back with Mr. Pendergast. And what's been happening up to this point is Aunt Polly is doing a very good job of convincing people in the town to not partake in the bazaar, in the carnival, to raise money for the new orphanage, right? And a lot of people are scared to partake in it, and Pollyanna and Jimmy are doing their part to try to get people to be a part of it. So they get back together with Mr. Pendergast, and he has chandeliers that are producing prisms on the wall, the little rainbows when the sunlight hits it. And apparently nobody in the town, even though these people have chandeliers and have these pieces of glass, none of them have seen a prism before.
It's life-changing.
Yeah, it's life-changing. This isn't the land that time forgot. Like, they tell him, we should sell these as rainbow makers, or whatever it is they call them, at the bazaar. So, of course, he takes down all of his chandeliers and takes all the little pieces of glass and all the prisms off. And then she goes back to Mrs. Snow's house to show her, look, you have prisms. And Mrs. Snow is like, what? This thing that I have in the window reflecting sunlight? You mean this thing that's in my house serving its exact purpose? I never knew it could do this before.
Seriously, you who spend all your time in bed have never noticed when you're there for every piece of sunlight throughout the day, and you never noticed it.
And also, for a movie that was showing off such brilliant colors when they're in Mr. Pendergast's house, why would you have these prisms projected against, like, dark wallpaper and dark walls? Like,
I know.
It doesn't show at all.
Seriously, it's not 1930 where we needed the Technicolor flex.
I know.
The way this is so heavy-handed, I really thought we were setting up a romance between Pendergast and Mrs. Snow.
Right.
I thought that's when she was going to do the Grandpa Joe and leap out of bed because she got a man.
No, instead, we're back at her house again, where she's with, I don't know if he's not the Undertaker, but she's picking out the handles for her own coffin, which is hysterical in and of itself.
This is hilarious. This is where she became my favorite character.
But you get this Steve Urkel moment where, like, clumsy Pollyanna, like, leaves the house and goes, I'm never coming to see you again, you evil old woman. Because all the Undertaker has done has say, shut up, you stupid orphan girl. And then he looks...
How does he even know that she's an orphan?
I don't know, but then he looks at Mrs. Snow and goes, I didn't mean to hurt her feelings. You called her the stupid orphan girl. or something to that effect. And then goes, I didn't mean to hurt her feeling. Are you kidding me?
There is also a really great moment where, you have that contradiction of Pollyanna basically telling her to get a life and get out of bed. And she is stopping his sale. So he gives her the nastiest look. It is absolutely hysterical. But this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie because it was so funny.
Yeah, I want to think that some of these characters walked so that we could get Let's Go Fly a Kite a few years later. But it's laughable.
Speaking of Let's Go Fly a Kite a few years later, I love the cake rebellion that the kitchen is staging.
I know.
Because it's, they want to take part in the bazaar and they're going to go against Polly and they think they're going to do it right under her nose. And I love it. I mean, it's so leading. It's such a leading shot when Angie is like, but where are we going to get all the supplies for it? And the cook is like, right here, of course, the big bag of flour to your left. Of course they're going to take from Polly's supply to do this.
Yeah, let's take the 15-pound bag of flour. Aunt Polly's not going to wonder where this went. Certainly not. She's not going to wonder. She's got her entire staff is under their thumb to the point where she doesn't even want them having families. And yet you're going to somehow have your house smell of all of these baked goods that Aunt Polly's never going to see. But we're going to pull one over on old Aunt Polly.
And they're giant cakes. They could not be any bigger. This is like a Gideon's on steroids.
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly what they do. But instead, we get to another scene. This is just it's just like a whole bunch of segments. It's just a series of segments because now we have the Reverend in a field by himself practicing another sermon that Aunt Polly wants him to perform. And here comes Pollyanna just showing up. And I love the scene, though, between Hailey Mills and Carl Malden, where Pollyanna starts to say, my father was a preacher and thought about quitting because he couldn't get, across to his congregation. And, the Reverend, sits down quickly next to her. And what did he do? And, she needs to, explain how he just started with the glad passages and the good passages.
There's 800 of them.
Yes. And he's like, really? You're a reverend. You've read the Bible. You know what's in there. You're just wanting to do what Aunt Polly's telling you to do. But the scene between the two of them is great. And I love that you do get a payoff on nobody owns a church, which is a line that Pollyanna had said earlier in the film. I believe she said it to Edmund.
It was when they were ready to fold on the bazaar because they didn't have a location for it. Because that's when you find out how many businesses Polly actually has her hand in.
Right.
And everybody starts one by one withdrawing because they don't want to go against her. The newspaper's not going to run ads because she has her hand in that. And then they realize that there's nowhere they're going to be able to house this event without her turning it down.
And they need Reverend Ford to endorse the event.
Right.
Which he has been hesitant to do. But at his next sermon, he gives a glad passage and fully endorses the event, and then very funnily says, if you don't go to the bazaar, I'll go back to my old ways, and you know that I'll do it. And it's a very, very funny scene, but it's such a full circle moment that he fully endorses this bazaar, which then leads to Aunt Polly not allowing Pollyanna to go. And that's really what sets off all of the actions that are going to happen here in the third act.
I agree with you, but I do feel like there is a little something missing from the Reverend's arc, or at least the way that Pollyanna relates to it. Because for as much as we've allowed all of these other characters to breathe and scenes have dragged, I sort of wish we had a little bit of a beat where she unpacks how jarring the Reverend's sermons are compared to her father's. And instead, she just sort of gives him the answer. Of all things, through a fake Abraham Lincoln quote.
Yeah.
I love this because it is so Walt to include something of Abe Lincoln in a movie, but he didn't even say this. So it's wild to me that they would take so much liberty putting words into a president's mouth like that, especially one that Disney revered. It's, well documented. And I buy it. I totally bought that this was something that Lincoln said. The only reason I even found out that it's not really his quote is because these lockets were released as a promotional piece in conjunction with the film. So there were only a couple of hundred of them made. And I believe the Disney archives were looking for the original, so they put out a call to anyone who had these lockets, and they received a bunch of them back, but I don't think they ever got the original.
Let's talk about where I think the movie really takes off. I mentioned it before, the third act takeoff, and it's the bizarre. I have to be honest with you. It took until the second time around for me to really recognize that this is sort of what redeems the entire movie for me. I've mentioned ad nauseum at this point. This feels like a television series, all put into one. This feels like a lot of see and say. This feels like a lot of setup. This feels like a muddied pace mess that just drags. But everything that happens in this scene makes all of that worth it. I love the slice of life. I love that everybody's having a good time. I love that the Reverend is dunking somebody in the dunk tank and makes a joke that he's been trying to baptize him for years. I love the scene with Pollyanna and Mrs. Snow. Now, Mrs. Snow is out, but specifically the fishing in the duck pond. It was a game.
Oh, gosh, it's so good.
Where the big prize that you can win is a doll. And there was a line earlier that the Glad game came about. When Pollyanna wanted a doll, they got crutches instead when they were with the missionary. And so that's how they fixed the disappointment. Mrs. Snow remembered that Pollyanna told her that story and rigged the game so that Pollyanna would be the one to win the doll.
It's such a beautiful moment. This whole scene is just so perfectly Disney. And I mean, the man, not the company, not the movies. This is just Marceline, Missouri, and everything that Walt loved about his hometown and that small town Americana. It's perfect. It's beautiful with the lanterns on the bikes. Everybody coming together for this event, all of the food. It's just so funny because they keep telling Pollyanna how late she is. And then she stops to eat literally everything.
Everything. And
play the game to get her doll. But it's so worth it because it's such a beautiful moment that Mrs. Snow ensures that she gets it. I also love the band. There is this woman playing the drums.
Yes.
And I want an entire spin-off series with her. She looks so happy. She's such a baddie sitting there doing the percussion. I love it. I absolutely love it. I think what's also great here too, and this is where, for as much as it drags, like I said, I do think it is very intentional because I think what we're expecting here, especially when Jimmy runs back to call Pollyanna out and Polly answers the door and she says, no, I'm not going to, she's too young to go by herself and I'm not taking her. I think they're trying to set up the idea that eventually Polly is going to cave and bring her and we just get our happy ending. And they've planted that seed because not once, but twice, Ed calls her out.
Yeah.
He does say that no one is interested in false charity.
Mm-hmm.
And then doubles down on it, calling her out on not having the capacity to love. So I think what we're expecting here is that she's going to break, come in, storm in, and pretend to reprimand Pollyanna for getting caught sneaking out.
Right.
And it couldn't be more opposite than that.
No. Pollyanna sneaks out via the tree, a trick she learned from Jimmy, and that obviously is going to pay off in a little while when she has to get back into the house. But let's talk about her getting back into the house, because Aunt Polly will not stand for this bazaar. She is banning Pollyanna from the event. She wants nothing to do with it, and yet somehow, some way, her entire staff, who she has her thumb over, all happen to go to this bazaar. None of them are at work doing their responsibilities for her. Instead, they're all gone. They've all gone to the bazaar. She's not firing any of them. She's not reprimanding any of them. And all of them know that Pollyanna is there, performing America the Beautiful on stage, mind you. Even though Aunt Polly would not permit her to go, none of them tried to sneak Pollyanna back into the home.
Thank you.
None of them thought to do it. Instead, Pollyanna climbs the tree.
This is the most egregious part, because it's not only that the staff has to get back into the home. We saw them take the cakes out the back door.
Yeah.
And all of them, if you really want to get into the minutia of it, the cook, Angie, and the driver/gardener all were carrying 2 of these giant cakes out. There was no way that one of them locked that door.
Right.
They would have just kicked it closed or elbowed it closed or said, that door is not locked, I guarantee you. And that's what I bump on a little bit, is that Pollyanna didn't even try to sneak in the back. There's a back staircase. She would have gotten up to her room. It was foolproof. So that's one really big error as far as the continuity goes. And the other is that Pollyanna comes back on a wagon that's like dropping people off. So why wouldn't they have come back all together?
Right.
It just makes no sense. I feel like you would have teed it up more effectively if she had come back with the house staff, and maybe they were walking through the front door and they were like, oh, Polly's still up. We can't bring you in with us. And then she was like, it's all right. I climbed the tree.
Right.
I'll go back up that way.
Or Pollyanna doing what she's done previously in looking to protect those, saying, don't get yourselves in trouble. I have a way in.
There you go.
That's all it had to be.
There you go. And then their guilt would have been even greater.
Yes.
The other thing that I bump on, and I mean, without this, you have no climax. She could have fully gotten in the window and then reached back out for the doll. I realize that we are setting up that this doll is now her most prized possession. It's what she has always wanted. She doesn't want to drop it. But she absolutely could have gotten in the window and reached for it. Instead, she tries to balance on the windowsill and grab the doll, and that's when she falls. And I am sorry. But, I mean, the first time I saw this, it was kind of shocking to see her crumpled body lying there like that. But a fall like that, her face should have looked like Harvey Dent. There I go with the Batman reference this episode.
Welcome to the game. She looks like a cartoon character where you've got the arm going one way, the leg going like it's. I understand the movie's 65 years old, so okay, you can make the case for but back then you hadn't seen stuff like that, so by today's standards it's silly, but by today's standard it's pretty silly.
I mean, I understand that in a Disney movie, we're not going to get too bloody gutsy with it. Absolutely. But it is still kind of grotesque the way that they have her positioned, because her torso's all twisted. Like her upper body is facing one way and her lower body is facing the other.
She looks like Wile E. Coyote after he hits the wall.
She looks like a rag doll, which, by the way,
yes,
they leave out overnight. And when Aunt Polly goes to pick it up, it's literally in the same position as Pollyanna was when she fell.
Wearing the same
on
outfit.
The nose.
Wearing the same exact outfit as Pollyanna, by the way.
But when I tell you, the first time that I saw this movie, I was not expecting this at all whatsoever. It is pretty shocking because they are very much, like I said, luring you into a false sense of security that this is going to be a happy, light movie. And they do try to end on that note. But it's kind of like, after this, it does just end.
Yeah.
You know, Polly realizes that she's going to have to make some adjustments. She's going to give Pollyanna the big bedroom, you know. Gee, what a gesture after making her sleep in the attic. and this is after Pollyanna's surgery, if the surgery is successful.
Right.
Which we don't even know if it's going to be. Not the point, I guess, that we don't get confirmation on it. But Ed has to take her to Baltimore. Time is of the essence here. So you have to get her on a train to travel there. And I really do think all they wanted was this end shot of her getting on the train and waving goodbye to everybody, which makes no sense to addressing her injury. You wanted like this, almost like this Hello Dolly ending, that it like builds and builds and builds, and then the main character has the moment and like all she does is walk into a restaurant. So she's saying goodbye to all of these people. They're trying to like make it like Dorothy saying goodbye to Oz.
Yeah.
Where they're all, repeating her one-liners back to her and bestowing gifts upon her and giving her messages of positivity, which, okay, I get, which was, it was sort of something that Ed had suggested, was that surgery is not going to be enough. We need this kid to have hope, because the most hopeful person in the world just had that taken away from her. So we need to give back to her what she gave to us. But then this is where there's a huge disconnect from the beginning of the film, because it's like, you changed all of our lives, but you act like you were all fighting with each other.
Yeah.
And she waved a wand and made it all go away. And that wasn't the case. You were never fighting. I mean, things had to change for the better, sure. But really a lot of that came from the church.
It did. But Mrs. Snow steals the scene, though.
Oh, gosh.
When she likens what Pollyanna's going through to what she went through, where it's like, you took somebody that was bedridden and got them out of bed, and you're going to do the same. Like, and then she's smiling, and as soon as Pollyanna is taken away, her face falls, because she knows that she basically just BS'd her.
Yeah.
Because they don't know that this surgery is going to work. And it's just like the way Aunt Polly like comes down and tells the staff, she's like, she's paralyzed. Change her bedroom. Like, that is basically the whole thing. And you're right. They do all of this just to get her on the train, so she's waving goodbye, so that they can put up the little sign on the hook that says, The Glad Town. It's all just in service of that shot.
It is a crash landing to the finish.
Yeah. I mean, to say the very least.
So, what says you? Do you think the surgery was successful or not?
I think, in all likelihood, the surgery was probably successful because it is a Disney movie and it has to have a Disney end. That's my guess. Why they didn't... I mean, I don't know how the novel ends. Perhaps in the book they leave it sort of open-ended, so Disney didn't want to, go ahead and put words in the mouth of the writer or finish her story for her. I guess it worked. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think she survived the fall.
This is true.
There is no way her body was crumpled like that and she even survived the fall. I'm sorry.
Well, let's talk about the actress that survived the fall, Miss Hailey Mills, as Pollyanna. I mean, look, she's charming. It's Hailey Mills. What do you want me to say? Definitely not, I think, not her best Disney performance. And it's not her fault. I think she did the best that she could with some very sloppy writing at times. I think she's better in... I mean, honestly, I think she's better in Moon Spinners than she is in this. Certainly, I think she's better in Summer Magic. And by far, she's much better in The Parent Trap. But I think for a first go of it, you can see what Walt Disney saw in her and what landed her this 6-film contract.
I agree. She is so stinking cute and so charming that I never actually noticed until we were talking about this film and really breaking it down. Is Pollyanna as a character the first all-knowing quit machine? Because she's always got all the answers. That's the whole character arc, right?
Jimmy's like that too, though.
A little bit, yeah. But, I mean, you can overlook it because she's just so sweet and so talented. This wasn't her first film. It was her first with Disney.
Right.
she had been acting overseas, and then I believe it was actually Lillian Disney that saw her in something, and she was like, no, you got to cast this kid. And clearly it all worked out for everybody.
Yeah. Speaking of Jimmy, he is played by Kevin Corcoran. We've talked about him, a handful of times, Mickey Mouse Club, member. Yeah, I think that this was a good role for him.
He was also Old Yeller, if I'm not mistaken. We're not going to talk about that, though.
Not going to talk. We don't talk about that, Bruno. I think it's the only film we're never going to review on this show.
Oh, and he was Swiss Family, which we did review.
Yes. Which is a borderline perfect film. In fact, I may have given it perfect marks. I don't quite remember, but definitely great in that movie. And I think he is good in this. I think for the role that he plays, it makes sense. I do like him as sort of like an unintentional foil to Pollyanna. Of course, the happy ending where he gets adopted by Mr. Pendergast. Is it a little on the nose? Yeah, but you know what? I think the two of them kind of needed each other. He was good. He's fine.
I still feel like Pendergast and Mrs. Snow would have made a lot more sense than this elderly gentleman adopting Jimmy. But it is a nice place for Jimmy to land, especially because all the kid wants to do is go fishing. He's so innocent. So I'm glad that he gets his happy ending. He's a little, if I'm being honest, he grinds my gears a little bit. The way he says Pollyanna, and he's always calling to her, but otherwise really sweet, great character.
Jane Wyman plays Polly, Aunt Polly. She's great. For what this character is, she takes it and runs with it.
I love her. I absolutely love her as a character. I love the actress. We talked before about how amazing the set and the costumes were, but her costumes are just absolutely stunning throughout this film. And even, for as much as we've criticized her for being such a control freak and wanting the town under her thumb, she was ahead of her time in that regard, because a woman in power like that now is finally respected. It's a little bit jarring to me that in the time this film is supposed to be set, nobody questioned an unmarried woman with that much power, that much control, and no one was trying to take it away from her. But that's where, like I said, it is very much ahead of its time. Even though, she does sort of orchestrate the whole tragedy here, I still love Polly.
Yeah. Let's talk about Reverend Ford. He is played by Carl Malden, more Hollywood royalty. He steals every scene that he's in. He probably was the most talented actor in the film. Although Jane Wyman, they're 1A, 1B. They kind of jockey for position there. I think that any scene that he is in, he just captivates the screen. I think what probably sets him a step ahead for me is just because with Aunt Polly, at times she's just mean for the sake of, but he plays the conflicted character oh so well.
I couldn't agree more. And I really think that those sermon scenes would feel like they were dragging so much more in the hands of a lesser talent.
Yes.
He at least kept you engaged with it.
For sure. Nancy Olson plays Nancy Furman. I love the relationship that she has with Pollyanna. I was kind of waiting for her the entire time to get busted and have to sit there and own up for what she has done and lose her job, but end up with George. But none of that ever happens. Instead, Pollyanna comes out of this tragedy to see that Nancy is engaged, and we're holding off the wedding so that you can be our flower girl. It's a nice moment. It's a great bond that the two of them have. I just wish that this character would have protected Pollyanna at some point, and that opportunity never really comes.
Yeah, because the flower girl thing is really patronizing when you think about it. But I do like Nancy. I love that everything worked out as far as her relationship goes. I love the bond that she has with Pollyanna, because it's not only a almost older sister type of relationship that she establishes, she is kind of the maternal figure in Pollyanna's life, because Pollyanna really had to work for that out of work for it. I mean, you needed a tragedy to get that out of Polly.
Right. Let's move on and talk about Adolphe Menjou, who plays Mr. Pendergast. I like this character. I sort of like that he lives up to his reputation. He does have a full circle moment at the end, but I feel like they rush to his arc. I guess because I hate to say it, you waste so much screen time on other things that he goes from being this old curmudgeon that's going to live up to enslaving children in his basement to, yeah, let's sell prisms and I'll adopt you, kid. Let's go.
Yeah, I feel like they needed to reserve a little bit more when peeling back the layers of his onion. I wish that we had seen him lean into the, crazy old coot who lives by himself a little bit more, and maybe he had done something to like actually scare the children, not throw them in a basement, but like something that aligns with that reputation. And then maybe, I mean, not that this movie needs to go on anymore, but like I feel like there did need to be something else before they really cracked his shell.
Yeah. And Agnes Moorehead plays Mrs. Snow.
Best known probably for Bewitched.
Yes.
So that was a big get for Disney back in the day. I love her. I just love her. Perfect casting, great character.
She's unbelievable. I mean, this ensemble cast is absolutely stacked. Final thoughts on Pollyanna. I'll go ahead and go first because I feel like I can be very brief with this. Upon the second viewing, I saw all of the things that make this film a beloved film. I think that by the end, there are moments where you are left with a lump in your throat, and I do think that the cast as a whole knocks it out of the park. Where it's problematic is the pacing is horrific. It's just very, very slow. At times, it's just boring, and there's too much going on. Do I think that the film holds up? I think that it does, because I think that the sets are great, the props are great, the costumes are unbelievable, and I wish that they still made films in this vein, but obviously the runtime has to be a lot tighter. Obviously, the film has done very well over the course of the 6+ decades since its release. It didn't do well in the box office, but it has garnered on and become a cult sort of movie, and it has made a ton of money for Walt Disney as a company, and it did springboard the career of Hailey Mills. So I think that it has aged fairly well. Parts of it are dated, but it's a turn-of-the-century film made in 1960. That's just going to happen. But I think it's at least worth one watch. Do I think it has some rewatchability? I think that it does, but not for quite some time. I would go back and watch Parent Trap or Summer Magic, which still isn't on Disney Plus at the time of this recording, before I would go and watch this one personally.
I agree with you. Is this the best film that Hailey Mills ever did for Disney? No. But this is like required viewing for the quintessential Disney fan. This is, one of those films where you can feel Walt's spirit and you know that he touched it. And it's that classic Americana that he loves. So I highly recommend checking it out if you've not seen it and if we've not spoiled too much already, which to your point goes back to the rewatchability. The first time you see it, if you don't know what's coming, it is very much shocking. And I feel like once that shock value is sort of taken away, that probably does lend to rewatching it, because then you can just enjoy it for what it is. You can enjoy all the happy parts of it.
Yeah.
And I know we ragged on the pacing a bit and some of the more absurd things that happen with all of the character introductions, but in spite of itself, it is a feel-good movie and worth a watch on that alone, especially for this time of year, because at the time of this recording, we are in those last licks of summer where everybody's sort of, getting ready for back to school, at least in the Northeast. Down here, you're back already. But it is like the perfect time for a cozy family movie like this.
Yes. Well, we want to know what you have to say about Pollyanna. You can let us know on all forms of social media at Monoreel Radio, or you can email us monoreelradio@gmail.com. We are going to forego news of the week because, well, Destination D23 is happening currently. And all of the recap from that will be on the upcoming Dockside chat, which is going to be released in just a couple of days. So we're going to go over all of the news then, and we're going to give our in-depth thoughts. So we're just going to put a pin in that for now. Thank you so much for joining us this and every week on Monoreel Radio. Monoreel Radio will always be free, but there are many ways that you can support the show. Please give us a rating wherever you listen to your podcast. Join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms. Share your favorite episodes with family and friends who may enjoy them, and of course, book your next trip with Jackie. Links to everything can be found at monoreelradio.com. We all get one story. Make yours a magical one.
On behalf of Monoreel Radio, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the movies, the stuff dreams are made of.